It's like carrying cobalt pools. Oh. Time to push the button and see what happens.
In 5, 4, 3, 2.
2,000, 3,000, 4,000.
It all started with an Estes taser kit that I got for Christmas when I was 8 years old. Soon after, I saw the movie October Sky and read the book Rocket Boys. Inspired by Homer Hickham's story, I started making my own rocket fuel. By making sugar rockets, I was able to launch lots of rockets, learn a ton, and really dive into the science behind it. Rocket cars, static fires, tethered rockets, and other fun experimental projects were a staple at the time. When I was 12, my neighbor introduced me to the CU Boulder Rocketry team. For the next couple of years, I was a part of the club as we worked on Project Medusa, a 2-stage minimum diameter M-motor rocket. I learned all about high-power rocketry. I started going to local club launches and building my own mid-power rockets, counting the days till I turned 14 and could get my junior level 1 certification. In high-power rocketry, there are 3 levels of certification that basically determine how big of a rocket motor you're allowed to fly. Rocket motors are classified by their total impulse, and letters are used to define impulse classes. The first level of certification involves building and launching a high-power rocket successfully and demonstrating a basic understanding of high-power rocketry and safety. Woohoo! I got my L1 as soon as I was old enough to, allowing me to fly H and I motors. Over the next few years, I built several other high-power rockets. I started using electronics for dual deploy and onboard cameras for super cool videos. I tried a few higher performance designs and also got to mentor other students on cool rocket projects. Eventually, I got my level 2 certification, which is similar to the L1 process, but involves flying a J, K, or L motor, as well as passing a test about laws and regulations surrounding high-power rocketry. Throughout this time, I also worked on a few other personal projects, further adding to my L2 experience. During college, I've been a part of the Stanford Student Space Initiative. This has given me the opportunity to work on a few really big rockets and expand my rocketry knowledge.
Yes, I'm calling right now.
Visual.
2, 1.
Wow! As 2023 came around, I was excited to work on a new project and felt that I had accumulated enough rocketry experience to attempt my Level 3 certification, the highest level. It has arrived. Today's an exciting day because my L3 supplies are here. Here's all the fiberglass parts, and today I get to start building them. Should be great.
Part of the L3 process includes writing a technical report. This goes over the entire process from start to designing, to building, to simulating, and all of the decisions you made in between and why you made them. So I'm just going to run through my certification package. It starts off with an overview of the rocket. It's a 6-inch diameter fiberglass rocket, 11 feet tall with a 98mm motor mount. It weighs a little under 50 pounds with the motor, planning to fly on an Aerotech M1075 to just under 7,000 feet and 500 miles an hour. It's got 2 flight computers and a GPS. It's got a 36-inch stroke and a 13-foot main. Also included a scale drawing to show some of the important dimensions of the rocket, including where the stability margin is. Then it goes through a construction package. I started off detailing every component that I used in the rocket. Then it went through the construction package. Now, you already saw a lot of this in the build montage, so I'll just go through it quickly, but I detailed all of the important steps that went into creating this rocket, from fin attachment, fin filleting, airframe preparations, AV bay preparations, and all that. So next up is the recovery package. This kind of goes over how the recovery aspect of the rocket works. So the drogue is housed inside the lower airframe, avionics are housed in a central coupler, and main is housed in the upper airframe. Now, how it works is on the way up, hopefully the rocket is all together in one piece. Then when you get to apogee, you have a separation at the lower airframe and drogue comes out. The rocket falls, going at a faster rate, so it's not drifting really far in the wind. And then when it gets to a lower altitude, you have separation of the upper airframe and the main chute is deployed to give it a nice soft landing. So I won't go into too much detail on exactly how the system is set up, but basically the lines are 35 feet long. I have chute protectors for the parachutes and swivels to avoid any twisting of the lines. One of the important parts about designing a rocket is chute sizing. You got to make sure that the rocket's not going to come down too fast, but you also don't want it to come down too slow. And you also don't want any decelerations to be too abrupt on the rocket. And so I use this descent rate formula, and you basically can adjust the diameter and coefficient of drag of the parachute to find kind of the optimal descent rate. I like to use a 50 to 70 foot descent rate for drogue and a kind of in the 10 to 20 foot range for a main. So I kind of plugged in these numbers and found that if I use a 36-inch drogue, I get a 50 foot descent rate. And if I use the Cert 3 XXL chute, I'll get a 10 foot descent rate. That's a 40 foot per second deceleration, and I built this rocket like a beast. I know it can handle it. Next up is ejection charge size calculations. So this is also really important because you don't want to overpressurize your rocket, and you also need to ensure that the rocket separates and the parachutes come out. So I use the ideal gas law for this. You pretty much rearrange it to solve for N, plug in some numbers, and then you can find out for like a desired chamber pressure, how much black powder you should use. This isn't for sure. You still need to do some ground testing to make sure that's accurate, but it gives you a good starting point. Next up, shear pins. Shear pins are pretty important because you don't want the rocket to drag separate or have any premature deployment of the parachutes. So in order to do that, we use these little nylon screws that basically just hold the rocket together until the ejection charge separates it. But we need to make sure that these are sized properly. So to do that, we need to calculate the separation force, how much force that bulkhead is feeling during separation. That's pretty simple. Force is pressure times area. 8 psi times the area of the bulkhead gives 226 pounds on that bulkhead. So if we use 440 shear pins, these break at about 50 pounds of force. And so I'm planning to use 3 of them, which is enough to hold the rocket together, but it's also easily going to shear with that 226 pounds of separation force. The next part is static pressure sampling ports. This is important because I'm using barometric flight computers, and these need to take accurate samples of the outside pressure. And the rocket is going up really fast. The inside of that AV compartment has to adjust to that outside pressure. So I use some formulas recommended by the manufacturers of the altimeters, and this came out to 3 5/16-inch diameter holes in the AV bay, which should allow those altimeters to take accurate readings. Ground testing is really important. So we kind of got an estimate for the black powder sizing using those formulas in the previous slides, but you still need to test these to make sure that that's going to be sufficient. And so I ended up bumping up the estimates by 0.5 grams just to give a little bit of an extra margin, and 4.5 grams for the drogue for the lower airframe was good, energetic, satisfactory separation. I'll probably end up using 5 for the flight, and then I'll use 6 for the backup charge. 3 grams for the main compartment. It was satisfactory. Once again, I'll probably bump that up by 0.5 grams just to give a little bit of an extra safety margin. Flight computers, I'm using a Perfect Flight Stratologger CF for the main charge. I love these things. I use them a lot. This is going to be the primary flight computer. It's going to deploy drogue at apogee and main at 1,500 feet. So next up, we've got the MissileWorks RC3, another great one. This is going to be our backup altimeter. It's going to fire a charge 3 seconds after apogee in the drogue compartment, and then it's going to fire one at 1,000 feet. So in case the Stratologger doesn't do its job or the black powder charges don't, this one will be our backup. The switches, I'm using these rotary switches. They're pretty robust and resistant to shock and vibe. So this is going to help make sure that the switches don't get turned off during flight. The avionics sled was custom designed and 3D printed by me. I used 440 heat set inserts and standoffs to securely mount the altimeters, and it has a little box on the back that I can bolt the batteries into to make sure that they can't fall off and bounce around the compartment, causing any issues. Here's the schematic for the AV compartment. Pretty simple. Batteries hooked up to altimeters, switches, charges, all that. Flight simulations are also important to make sure that the rocket is going to have a stable flight. You want to be confident that things are going to go well. So I started off before I even built anything. I measured every single component with calipers and also a scale. So this let me create a really accurate model in OpenRocket. Calculated stability ensured that it was within a proper margin. I ended up with 2.33 calipers, which is a good margin. It's not at risk of becoming understable, but it's also not at risk of becoming overstable, which can lead to things like coning and weathercocking. Flight simulations, it simmed to about 6,700 feet, 459 miles an hour, all that stuff. I double checked to make sure everything looked good, and everything did. I also took a look at the drag characteristics. This isn't a super high performance rocket, so I'm not worrying too much about these, but it's cool to know. So it's also important to make sure that the rocket is exiting the launch rail at a sufficient speed. And so if it's going too slow, the rocket may not be stable yet because it has to be going fast enough for the fins to actually do their job. And so according to the simulations, a 10-foot rail with the M1075 motor, launch ride clearance occurs 0.42 seconds into flight with a velocity of 34 miles an hour. This is kind of right at the generally accepted safe minimum of 50 feet per second for exit velocity. I'm intending to use a 13-foot rail for the cert. So you also have to worry about wind because even if your rocket is going fast enough when it leaves the launch rail, if there is a significant crosswind, it can cause the rocket to go unstable. And so in order to kind of account for this, the crosswind speed should be no more than a quarter of the velocity of the rocket when it clears the rod. So for safe flights, 10-foot rod launched up to 9 miles an hour, 15-foot rod, 11 mile an hour wind, 20-foot rod, 13 mile an hour wind. Okay, next up, I made a bunch of checklists and standard operating procedures to ensure that I didn't forget anything on the launch day. So the equipment list goes over everything that I need to bring. The pre-launch and integration procedures make sure I don't forget any steps. Launch procedures, same thing. Post-flight and contingency procedures are just some safety things to make sure that everything's done properly. And then it was time for the launch.
Just like carrying cobalt tools.
All right. Yeah, we're walking out to the range. How do you feel?
I am so excited. A little nervous, but confident it's gonna go well.
Oh, when you did that.
Cameras are on, altimeters say everything's good, so time to push the button and see what happens.
In 5, 4, 3, 2.
2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 4,800, 5,400, 5,800, 6,100, 6,300, 6,356. Apogee at 6,356. Descent at minus 63.
Gonna watch this one for a bit. Looking for a main at 1,500.
Below 5,000. Descent at minus 63. Below 2,000. Descent at minus 63.
We should have a main here shortly. I see an event and I see a shoot this time.
Yeah! Woo! Attaboy! Yeah! Attaboy!
Below 100. Descent at minus 21.
Oh yeah, touchdown.
Beautiful.
And right next to a road. How convenient is that? I'm dreaming about this since I was 12. Now I can fly even bigger rockets. Just make sure we don't... Here's my tool of choice for turning off the electronics. It is a RERP. Oh yeah.
Hello,
And we have